This is a sneak peek on a future build video that I'm going to do over the weekend. I'm at a good point where I can start actually putting this contour in, and I figure I'd make a video on, how to do that. Basically, what this is going to be, it's going to be an American flag puzzle. And right now, all the math is checking out. The puzzle pieces are aligned to each stripe, starting to look really good. And now that next dynamic on how we're going to carve that into our material is right now. So let's go ahead and we'll get started. We'll jump right into it. I'm going to go the top face of this material, and I'm going to build a box, and I'm going to extrude that into a solid that I'm going to model against. So just replicating what this is minus all the other components that make up this American flag. So I'm going to hide the American flag now and have my base sketch, and then I'm going to extrude this down. And right now I'm gauging my overall thickness is going to be 3/4 of an inch. Hit OK on that. Now this will be my kind of a sanity check on replicating this without touching the rest of it. So with that, let's go to form, and there's multiple different ways you can do this in Fusion. This is the simplest, easiest thing that I can do, and I've gotten really good results as far as the mesh that this produces. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this and I'm going to create a plane, and I'm going to select that top portion of that face, and I'll build my overall dimensions of that box, and then this automatically produces a grid system. Now you really want to keep this really simple, because the more grids and more points and things, when you start pushing and pulling, the more complex and uneven, and it's just a little bit harder. So I'm going to bring this down to 5x5. That'll give me little boxes all the way across this plane that I can manipulate over time. Now let's go ahead, and that actually looks pretty good, so we'll hit OK on that. Now with the edit form function, you can edit an entire square, or you can do an edge or a point or the entire edge of this. Let's go ahead and hide this body that we made previously. So now we only have this plane to work off of. So you can push and pull. You can do a whole laundry list of edits. Just know every time that you make an edit and you release it, it's going to save those individual ones that you just did. So this last operation where I just pushed it down a little bit, if I cancel, it's going to keep that original, the last edit that I did within that edit form that I just completed. Best thing to do, if you don't like it, just hit the edit undo button, and you can reset everything, and you can continue on with your edits. So let's go ahead and we'll start manipulating this thing. And I like to skip every other line. So, if I'm going to have a valley here, and it's going to come up and into another valley, I'm going to edit this line and keep everything else the same. Now, there's multiple different ways you can do this. You just got to play around with it. The biggest thing that you got to keep in mind is, especially if you're doing this for a wavy flag, is you have to keep it organic. You have to make it look like the wind is blowing the flag and the fabric is interacting with that wind. If you have too sharp of curves, too sharp of valleys or points, it won't look natural, and it will take away from the overall effect that you're trying to achieve. So I'm really careful with the amount of edits that I do here, but let's go ahead and we'll just start with these two lines. All right, so what I'm doing though, you can't see it here, but I'm holding my shift key down and I'm selecting each one of these lines. And if you accidentally click a face or a point, you can always click it again and it'll unselect it. But that's all I'm trying to edit as far as right now. So I'm going to pull this down, but before I do that, I'm going to do my sanity check. And I'm going to look at it from the front view, and I'm going to pull this down so I can see my lines. And that is way too little. Let's keep going down just a little bit more. A little bit more. I want to keep material at the bottom of this, because if you take too much material out of the base material that you're using, it's going to be really brittle. It's going to break. And you don't want to do that. You want to make sure it actually lasts. So always keep in mind, you know, the materials that you're actually going to work with in real life. You got to really pay attention to that. All right, so I have just a really nice little curve that's going down and then up and then down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end up moving these 2 points down. And we'll start getting this kind of this effect where we want it. I'm going to bring this way down. Okay, I'm going to do the other edge. I'm going to modify these 2 points. Bring that down. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. This and this are going to go down. And you can start seeing that it's starting to look like something. But there's a lot of work that still needs to be done here. I'm going to take these 2 points and I'm going to bring these down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over to the left. I'm going to move this over to the left. What it's doing is just slightly changing that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an additional line here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. And I'm going to insert edge, and it's going to insert another edge along the left side of this. Now you can adjust this, but I'm going to keep it all the same. 0.5 is perfect. Now it added an additional edge, and it's starting to even some of that stuff out. All right, so I'm going to speed up the video a little bit. I'm doing the same process. I added lines, both horizontal and vertical, and just kind of kept playing around, but I made sure that that profile that I put in on that plane was within that box. And that was really critical. So I was going back and forth, just doing slight adjustments. Again, making sure that it had a really nice even flow between the peaks and the valleys, nothing too crazy. And yeah, honestly, it really only took maybe 30 minutes to kind of flush that out. But just take your time and pay attention to your base model. All right, I am pretty happy with the movement that I got in here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to smooth everything out. There's still some pretty sharp edges here, but if you select everything and you go to modify, smooth, you can change this up. I'm going to go 0.1 or 1. And that got everything pretty smooth. I'm going to do it one more time. looks pretty good. Let's look. Starting to look pretty good. All right, so this looks pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and convert this. And we're going to convert T-spline to B-rep. Can't tell you what B-rep stands for. If anybody knows, just put it in the comments. All right, so now that we got it converted, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to splice this body with that. So I'm going to put that visible back again. And then I'm going to slice body. Now, if this gives me an error, we might have to modify this just a little bit, but the body to split is this, and the splitting tool is going to be this mesh. Now, what it did was it sliced that along the plane, so I'm going to hide my mesh, and I'm going to hide that top portion. Now, I have my 3D profile. And that looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my 3D render of all my puzzle pieces. And what I'm going to end up doing is I'm just going to make a copy of all these. That way I don't mess around with all the rest of my stuff here. Let's hide this. Let's make sure this is all the way through. It is. Now let's splice it along all of this. Now this is going to be kind of, I wish Fusion you could just select this entire group of bodies, but it doesn't allow you to do that. So I'm going to open up all these individual ones, and this is more for just rendering. In the toolpath generation, it's a lot easier. But when I do my render of how this is going to look and maybe put it online, it makes it make sense. So the body to split, I'm going to select all these other bodies. These bodies, splicing tool. That one's done. Row 1, row 2. Row 3. And row 4. All right. Now we just made just a ton of stuff here. We'll go through and we'll delete all of these new bodies that it just created. Delete. We'll hide that. And there is our wavy flag puzzle piece. So each individual one is there. That's what it's going to look like. I'm digging the wave. It looks really organic and seamless. It's nothing really crazy. And I still left some distance here, about 1/4 of an inch. I'm comfortable with that. Yeah, that looks really good. Really organic. Yep, 0.23. That's plenty of distance. All right, so now let's go through and we'll set up our toolpath generation. But before we get into the toolpaths, let's just take a piece. We'll move a piece out just to see. As you can see, the pieces are very unique. And when you cut that profile in, it just looks super cool. So that's what each puzzle piece will look like. Very subtle. Some will be subtle, some won't be. But they're thick enough to make sure that these edges don't break off. And that's why when I build this thing, I'm going to be really careful. I'm going to make sure all these edges are very clean. I have a really good glue seam. And probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to put veneer backing on this just to strengthen up each one of these joints. I'm really going to have to do that for the union and the rest of these stripes. You know, that's one piece right here. And gluing end grain to end grain, that's really just not a strong joint. So having another plane worth of glue and some material there will really strengthen that out. But that looks super cool. So I'm really excited to get into the garage and start doing this. But let's hit the undo button, and let's start with the tool path so we can actually cut this thing out. Because I know that this body is the same as this. These two are exactly the same. I'm going to go ahead and this is going to be my body that I'll cut and do all the tool pathing off of. So from here, manufacturer, let's go ahead and start a new setup. Let's select this body. And then relative box size, I'm going to set the offsets to 0. Now you can see my overall dimensions of my material is 12 by 6.5. And then I'll make sure that I'm going to center point my 0. And my X, Y, and Z axis are all running the same as for my machine. So when I set this into my machine, the union is right here and the rest of the stripes are here. So that gives me exactly where it needs to be for when I put it in the machine. I used to run 2 tool paths, a clearing operation and the actual 3D ball nose operation. And I've come to realize that clearing operation, if it's not deep, if it's 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch, there's really no reason, especially if you're using a tapered ball nose bit, to do a clearing operation. So I'm going to go ahead and just go right into the 3D profiling with my ball nose. So when I select that parallel tool path, I'm going to select my tool. And all my presets are already in here. I've been experimenting with different cutters. This is my go-to 1/8 inch bit, and it's a tapered ball nose. I'm going to set this to disabled, and so I'll set this to 180 inches per minute. I can dial this back in my motion software by certain percentages. So if 100% is 180 inches per minute, I can automatically set it to 70 and it will stay at 70, which is, you know, probably 100 inches per minute. And then I can dial it up depending on how that tool reacts with the material. So I'll leave it at 180. And then for geometry, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select selection. And then this will be my bounding box. So my tool will stay within this box and it will machine everything within inside of it. Don't have to change anything here. The clearance height, retract top, bottom height, all that remains defaulted. I never have to change anything. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my step over 0.01. I think that's going to be enough, where I won't have too many crazy lines or anything like that. Nothing else changes here, and my linkages, everything stays the same. So we'll hit OK and we'll run it. So this is a 43-minute cut, and it cut my entire profile. So let's go ahead and simulate this. Now, this was an update in Fusion. I don't understand it. Like, rapid movement stock, got it. Yeah, that's not a huge thing. I don't know why it's airing out like that, but I've noticed this last update, it's funky, and I've ran a couple toolpaths with this error, and no issue. All right, let's run it. Now you can see that step over where those lines are. I can decrease my step over to kind of nullify that. It all depends on, you know, how fast I want to run my machine, and if I'm okay with sanding, it's kind of a no-brainer. What I'll probably do is I'll probably decrease my step over just because I'm cutting those individual puzzle pieces, and I'm going to slam those down really, really tight. And when I put it into the machine, and what will end up happening is if it's loose or it hits an edge, there's a chance that an edge might break off or chip off. And so I'll play around with that, and I'll do some, when I actually cut all the puzzle pieces out, I'll see exactly where I want that to land. So right around 43 minutes, and it looks pretty good. Let me, we'll go all the way to the end here. All right, I don't see anything crazy. And that profile looks really good. So organic, I could probably play around with this just a little bit more and have some more valleys and maybe bring this up. This looks like it needs to come up a little bit because it looks just a little bit flat. But again, it has to be natural. You don't want to get too crazy with anything like that. So everything looks good. I'm pretty happy with that. So. But what you did note, like if you notice or had questions about, you know, how did I actually cut these squares out or the puzzle pieces, this is going to be its own tool path. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to cut this on my machine before I do that 3D pass. So here's the puzzle pieces within the base material that I'll cut out. So I'll take a eighth inch spiral down cut, and I'll cut all these pieces out here. And they're all aligned to where I can cut it all out at once. And then when they're all cut out, it will come in and be this right here when it's all put together. And then my second tool path will be this 3D profile cut that I just did. So this thing is ready for post-processing, and it should be good. So I'm really, really happy with how this is going to turn out, and we'll see if it actually makes it. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate you guys watching this. If you learned anything, great. What I'm going to do is on my Patreon account, I'm redesigning all of that. Right now, I took everything offline, and I'm going through all of my models, all of my projects that I've made over the last 2.5 years, and I'm consolidating all that, and I'm going to put that on there. And so one flat rate, I think it's going to be, I'm going to probably land between $5 to $10. And you'll have access, complete access to all my models, all the manufacturing portion with the tool pass. And then that I'm going to update that probably bi-weekly, if not every month, with a new model, a new project. something unique, and I'm really excited about it. So if you like this sort of content, make sure you like, subscribe, and really pay attention over the next couple weeks, because you're going to see a lot of updates. And with that, I'll jump in the garage and I'll start making this thing. All right, cheers everyone.